Mary, welcome to studio.
Thank you.
Before we start talking about what you do today, please take us back and tell us where it all started for you.
Well, I would say it started as a young girl who had a dream of being a businesswoman. At the time, I'm not sure if I understood exactly what that meant, but I knew that, I would not be following the traditional career where my parents were as teachers, and that I wanted to be out in business. And I then, equipped myself with the correct qualifications to make sure that I could get into corporate by going through my BCom studies and qualifying as a CA.
We live in a country where there's a huge shortage of CAs, especially women CAs and black CAs. How did you find yourself embarking on that journey?
Through my career, I met somebody who was very frustrated in their workplace, and they felt that they had reached the glass ceiling and there was no progression for them in the workplace. And inquiring more, I knew that with this qualification, it's said to be so great that that ceiling would just be lifted for me. And after a bit of research on the CA, because I already had a BCom degree at the time, I then realized that it's possibly the best thing for me to do. And I embarked on the CA route, yeah.
It's a long qualification to obtain, sometimes lonely. How did you get through that, especially being a black woman?
Well, for me, and the most challenging part was the fact that I was already married and a bit older than other people that were serving articles with me at the time. But I think it was more tenacity and that and wanting to make sure that I finish what I started. Yes, it's hard work and it can be a bit lonely, but I also had a good support system with my husband being there behind me and encouraging me all the way.
How was the reception now that you're armed with this qualification?
Well, I think the expectations are high. With a qualification as a CA, you always find that people want you to they expect you to know things. They expect you to have the technical background that is required to do jobs. However, I think it's also through your wanting to learn and making sure that you can achieve more that people get to accept you and say there is value in what you bring to the workplace.
If you can just take us briefly in your career, what are some of the roles that you found yourself in?
With a CA degree, it was traditionally finance roles that I did. So I've worked as a CFO of a business, and I've also worked as a financial manager on a mine. So traditionally during that time, it was more on the finance that I concentrated on. But as I progressed and went forward, I knew that the technical side was not really where my love and joy was. I mean, I understand what to do and process transactions and what they mean. But however, I knew that my love was not really in the technical side of the business, but more in the commercial side of a business and running a business. And hence, after that, I went to study my MBA that would equip me with a broader background that I would require to be able to run a business.
What were some of the challenges coming from a woman's perspective in the corporate world?
Well, I suppose it's your stereotypes. So the first thing when you come in, it's like, what do you expect from a woman? Is she a softie, or will she want to play in in men's shoes and be hard? And the approach that I took was more to be myself and fit into my own shoes and be comfortable with who I am. So I never tried to emulate a man. At the same time, I'm not necessarily a softie that would be expected as would be expected with women. And the other things also is obviously the work-life balance that people always talk about, between your children, your husband, work, family, and all that. And in my view, it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a work-life balance.
If we look internationally, a lot of countries are starting to adopt employment policies which cater for a work-life balance. Is that something that you feel there's a need for in the country?
I think, how do I answer that? Not necessarily. The thing is that for me, it's about priorities. I prioritize my life. There are things that I can do. There are things that I can't do. So the question is that if I have, a nursery in the workplace and I can bring my baby with me to the workplace, can I then be really focused at the office during that time as well and be productive? And those are the questions that I think businesses need to ask themselves in terms of that. I think it's about more of a support system. If it works for your employees to have their children not too far from them, maybe in a nursery in the workplace, then it's okay. But you'd still have to have them outside the workplace. They cannot be in the office, because then it means that you cannot be productive. So for me, it's always been about making sure that I know, as a mother and as a wife and as a family member, the things that I will prioritize, and other things I outsource, and I get other people to help me in achieving those, and nothing falls through the cracks. But I think there are certain policies that you have to be mindful of. I think just taking women into perspective. For example, we say you get the disability signs that are put on, but nobody ever puts up a sign for pregnant women, because during that time when you are heavily pregnant, parking very far is not very practical for you. And it's sometimes those small things that you can do in the workplace to make sure that you can accommodate women and make them comfortable as well.
Are we as a society doing enough that we have more women and girls embarking on previously male-dominated careers?
I think the younger generation is. I think, when I look at our generation, you still find that, even with us, we had the qualifications, but you still went the softer route. So it wasn't the hard engineering side of it. So I think with my generation, find a lot of females in the accounting, HR sphere, PR sphere. But the younger generations are definitely going into the technical space. I get very excited. We run a bursary program for children of mine workers, and every year we hold graduations for them. And more I'm seeing more young girls coming through with technical qualifications such as engineering, and I get very proud of that.
So it can be done.
Oh, definitely.
Mary, if we focus on your current role now as a Chief Executive of the Mine Workers Investment Company, it's a very unique organization in that it's owned by a mine workers trust. How did you find yourself in this role, and what is the objective of the Mine Workers Investment Company?
Well, I first came across the Mine Workers Investment Company as a non-executive director on the board, and I was invited to come and sit on the board because they were looking for people with my skills and qualification. And when the time came for the then Chief Executive Officer to leave, the board thought that I would be capable to fulfill the role. And that's how I got in there. But the aim of the Mine Workers Investment Company is to generate an income for the trust, so that the trust can then do its social projects. So I touched on the bursary program earlier on that we do run, but we also have poverty alleviation programs and a training program for mine workers as well. So all the profits that the MIC, Mine Workers Investment Company, makes goes towards the trust, and the trust is able to then fund those projects.
Mary, thank you so much for your time, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Khosi.